Hey, it's Kesha. Welcome and welcome back. We're on our next reading in the Aquarian, chapters 114 through 116. As Jesus taught, a man stood forth and said, Rabboni, may I speak? And Jesus said, say on. And then the man spoke aloud and said, a storm upon the sea last night wrecked many fishing boats, and scores of men went down to death, and lo, their wives and children are in need. What can be done to help their sore distress? And Jesus said, a worthy plea. You men of Galilee, take heed. We may not bring again to life these men, but we can succor those who looked upon them for daily bread. You stewards of the wealth of God, an opportunity has come. Unlock your vaults, bring forth your hoarded gold, and bestow it with lavish hand. The wealth was laid aside for such times as these. When it was needed not, lo, it was yours to guard. But now it is not yours, for it belongs to those who are in want. And if you give it not, you simply bring upon your heads the wrath of God. It is not charity to give to those who need. It is but honesty. It is but giving men their own. Then Jesus turned to Judas, one of the 12, who was the treasurer of the band, and said, bring forth our treasure box. The money is not ours now. Turn every farthing to help those in such distress. Now, Judas did not wish to give all the money to those in want, so he talked with Peter, James, and John. He said, lo, I will give a certain part and save the rest. Wait, no. He said, lo, I will save a certain part and give the rest. That surely is enough for us, for we are strangers to the ones in want. We don't even know their names. But Peter said, why, Judas, man, how do you dare to think to trifle with the strength of right? The Lord has spoken true. This wealth does not belong to us in face of this distress, and to refuse to give it is to steal. You need not fear. You will not come to want. Then Judas opened up the treasure box and gave all the money. And there was gold and silver, food and raiment in abundance for the needs of the bereaved. A lawyer said, Rabboni, if God rules the world and all that is in them, did he not bring about this storm? Did he not slay these men? Has he not brought this sore distress upon these people here? And was it done to punish them for crimes? And we remember well when once a band of earnest Jews from Galilee were in Jerusalem and at a feast and were, for fancied crimes against the Roman law, cut down within the very temple court by Pontius Pilate, and their blood became their sacrifice. Did God bring on this slaughter of all these men who were doubly vile? And did God bring on this slaughter because these men were doubly vile? And then we bring to mind that once a tower called Siloam graced the defenses of Jerusalem. And seemingly without cause, it tottered and it fell to earth and 18 men were killed. Were these men vile? And were they slain as punishment for some great crime? And Jesus said, we cannot look upon a single span of life and judge anything. There is a law that men must recognize. Result depends on cause. Men are not motes to float about within the air of one short life and then be lost to nothingness. They are undying parts of the eternal whole that come and go. Lo, many times into the air of earth and of the great beyond, just to unfold the godlike self. A cause may be a part of one brief life. Results may not be noted till another. The cause of your results cannot be found within my life, nor can the cause of my results be found in yours. I cannot reap except I sow, and I must reap whatever I sow. The law of all eternities is known to master minds. Whatever men do unto other men, the judge and executioner will do unto them. We do not note the execution of this law among the sons of men. We note the weak dishonored, trampled on, and slain by those men called the strong. We note that the men with wood-like heads are seated in the chairs of state, are kings and judges, senators and priests, while men with giant intellects are scavengers about the streets. We note that women with the moiety of common sense, and not a wit of any other kind, are painted up and dressed as queens, becoming ladies of the courts of puppet kings because they have the form of something beautiful, while God's own daughters are their slaves and are as common as laborers in the field, or serve as common laborers in the field. The sense of justice cries aloud. This is the travesty of right. So when men see no further than one little span of life, it is no wonder that they say there is no God, or if there is a God, he is a tyrant and should die. If you would judge a right of human life, you must arise and stand upon the crest of time and note the thoughts and deeds of men as they have come through the past ages. For we must know that man is not a creature made of clay to turn again to clay and disappear. He is but a part of the eternal whole. There never was a time when he was not. A time will never come when he will not exist. And now we look, the men now who are slaves were tyrants once. The men who are now tyrants have been slaves. The men who suffer now once stood aloft and shouted with the fiend's delight while others suffered at their hands. And men are sick and halt and lame and blind because they once transgressed the law of perfect life, and every law of God must be fulfilled. Man may escape the punishment that seems but due for his misdoings in this life, but every deed and word and thought has its own metes and bounds, is cause and its own results. And if a wrong be done, the doer of the wrong must make it right. And when the wrongs have all been righted, then man will rise and be at one with God. And Jesus stood beside the sea and taught. The multitudes pressed close upon him, and he went out to the boat that was nearby and put a little ways from shore. And then he spoke in parables. He said, "Behold, a sower took his seed and went to the field to sow. With lavish hand he scattered forth the seed, and some fell in the hardened paths that men had made, and soon were crushed beneath the feet of other men, and birds came down and carried all the seed away. Some seed fell on rocky ground, where there was little soil. They grew, and soon the blades appeared and promised much. But then there was no depth of soil, no chance for nourishment, and in the heat of noonday sun, they withered up and died. Some seed fell where thistles grew and found no earth in which to grow, and they were lost. But other seed found lodgment in the rich and tender soil and grew apace. And in the harvest it was found that some brought forth 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. They who have ears to hear may hear. They who have hearts to understand may know." Now, his disciples were beside him in the boat, and Thomas asked, "Why do you speak in parables?" And Jesus said, "My words, like every master's words, are dual in their sense. To you who know the language of the soul, my words have meanings far too deep for other men to comprehend. The other sense of what I say is all the multitude can understand. These words are food for them. The inner thoughts are food for you. Let everyone reach forth and take the food that he is ready to receive." And then he spoke that all may hear. He said, "Hear ye the meaning of the parable. Men hear my words and understand them not. And then the carnal self purloins the seed, and not a sign of spirit life appears. This is the seed that fell within the beaten paths of men. And others hear the words of life, and with a fiery zeal receive them all, and they seem to comprehend the truth and promise well. But troubles come, discouragements arise, and there is no depth of thought. Their good intentions wither up and die. These are the seeds that fell on stony ground. The others hear the words of truth and seem to know their worth, but love of pleasure, reputation, wealth, and fame fill all the soil. The seeds are nourished not, and they are lost. These are the seeds that fell among the thistles and the thorns. But others hear the words of truth and comprehend them well. They sink down deep into their souls. They live a holy life, and all the world is blessed. These are the seeds that fell into fertile soil, that brought forth fruit abundantly. You men of Galilee, take heed how you hear and how you cultivate your fields. For if you slight the offers of this day, the sower may not come to you again in this or in the age to come." Then Jesus spoke another parable. He said, "The kingdom I may liken to a field in which a man sowed precious seed. But while he slept, an evil one went forth and sowed a measure full of darnel seed, then went his way. The soil was good, and so the wheat and the darnel grew. And then the servants saw the tares among the wheat. And when the servants saw the tares among the wheat, they found the owner of the field and said, 'You surely sowed good seed. From whence these tares?' The owner said, 'Some evil one has sowed these seed of tares.' The servant said, 'Shall we go out and pull up the roots of the tares and burn them in the fire?' The owner said, 'No, that would not be well. The wheat and tares grow together in the soil. While you pull up the tares, you would destroy the wheat. So we will let them grow together till harvest time. Then to the reapers I will say, go forth and gather up the tares and bind them and burn them in the fire, and gather up all the wheat into my barns. When he had spoken thus, he left the boat and went up to the house, and his disciples followed him. The Christians were in Philip's home, and Peter said to Jesus, Lord, will you explain to us the meaning of the parables you spoke today? The one about the wheat and tares especially. And God said, God's kingdom is a duality. It is an outer and inner form. As seen by men, it is composed of men, of those who make confession of the name of Christ. For various reasons, various people crowd around this outer kingdom of God, of our God. The inner kingdom is the kingdom of the soul, the kingdom of the pure in heart. The outer kingdom I may well explain in parables. Behold, for I have seen you cast a great net out into the sea. And when you hauled it in, lo, it was full of every kind of fish, some good, some bad, some great, some small. And I have seen you save the good and throw the bad away. This outer kingdom is the net, and every kind of man is caught. But in the sorting day, the bad will all be cast away, the good reserved. Hear, then, the meaning of this parable of the wheat and tares. The sower is the Son of Man, the field, the world. The good seed are the children of the light, the tares, the children of the dark. The enemy, the carnal self, the harvest day, the closing of the age, the reapers are the messengers of God. The reckoning day will come to every man. Then will the tares be gathered up and cast into the fire and be burned. Then will the good shine forth as the sun in the kingdoms of the soul. And Philip said, must men and women suffer in the flames because they have not found the way of life? And Jesus said, the fire purifies. The chemist throws into the fire the ores that holds all kinds of dross. The useless metal seems to be consumed, but not a grain of gold is lost. There is no man that has not in him gold that cannot be. There is no man that has not in him gold that cannot be destroyed. The evil things of men are all consumed in fire. The gold survives. The inner kingdom of the soul I may explain in parables. The Son of Man goes forth and scatters seeds of truth. God waters well the soil. The seeds show life and grow. First comes the blade, then the stalk, then the ear, then the full wheat in the ear. The harvest comes, and lo, the reapers bear the ripened sheaves into the garden of the Lord. Again, this kingdom of the soul is like the little seed that men may plant in fertile soil. 1,000 of these seeds would scarcely be a shekel's weight. The tiny seeds begin to grow, it pushes forth through the earth, and after years of growth it is a mighty tree, and birds nest in its leafy bowers, and men find refuge beneath its sheltering boughs from sun and storm. Again, the truth. The spirit of the kingdom of the soul is like a ball of leaven, that a woman hid in measures 3 of flour, and in a little while the whole is leavened. Again, the kingdom of the soul is like a treasure hidden in a field, which one has found, and straightway goes his way, and sells all that he has to buy the field. When Jesus had thus said, he went alone in the mountain pass nearby to pray. This is probably, this chapter 114 is probably the one that speaks to all of us at some point in time. I mean, the whole book can in some degree, but I think to a measure, there are always those who say, well, what about the little child that's born with cancer, or innocent people that are murdered, or, whatever travesty and tragedies befall people. There's always that question, if there is a God who is good, how is it that he can order these tragedies? And it's a hard lesson to hear and learn, I think, to hear that, we can't judge the effects that we're seeing in this life by this life alone. There is a greater arc of time that would seemingly be infinite, because we reincarnate and come back again and again to learn our lessons and to do better. And as we have these successive lives, we're going to have these experiences that are the opportunities for our growth. Yeah, so it's just a lesson in karma and reincarnation. But the truth remains that results, whatever you are seeing, is the result of a cause. These things don't happen simply out of happenstance. There is always a reason, even if we don't understand the reason. And oftentimes when we are beset by tragedy, it's difficult for us to see that from our perspective, what is being, it's done to us, as opposed to we created those conditions. And we take, when we're on that path of healing and growth, we begin to see these situations as opportunities for growth, which is sometimes hard. But also we begin to assess, well, what was my role in this? What was my responsibility? Where have I erred in my thinking and action? And again, it may not be your thinking and action in this life, so you can't necessarily point to something that happened that you can recall that was the reason for the results that you're seeing that you're not pleased with right now. That cause could have been set up in a previous incarnation. And I think that's why it's important for us not to judge the experiences that we're having, because the truth is we can't call it. We can't say that it's good or bad. It is simply an experience, and it is for us to grow through, and it's there for our growth. Which is always easier it's easy for me to sit here and say when I'm at a moment of triumph, but sure, I forget that when the shit gets hard. But this is why we study. This is why we meditate. This is why we come back to the Word. The parables, I think, were all explained, especially since Jesus went back and explained them. So I don't think there's much from me that I could add. It's interesting, actually, when I was reading it, I before I read for you, I read this on my own and think about the topic and what I might like to add. But this time when I was reading to you, I was really struck by how timeless these situations are. Because if you think about it, this is, 2,000 years ago, the retelling, these events are happening 2,000 years ago, and we're getting the retelling. And it's as if we have not progressed in thought and ability to choose leaders who will actually best represent us. And this whole idea of the men with wood-like heads that sit in the chairs of state, or the vapid women who are held up as queens because they have a measure of what's considered beautiful. This has been the story of the ages, and how is it that we have not begun to do better? The exhortation is always, let's do better. That's why we learn and we grow. But maybe this is the time where we'll reach critical mass, where more people will begin to step into the space of acting on what is right and true, rather than what is expedient and in the moment, profiting the smallest of us, or the least of us. Well, I think that's enough for me today. We'll come back and continue on at another time. In the meantime, have a great and fantastic experience. I'll talk to you.